today's video, I'm going to go over some of the basics of doing drywall work. We're going to remove this shelf. We're going to cut this piece of drywall, put it in there. We're going to use some corner bead so that it's rounded like the edge of this wall here, and make the whole opening meet up. First thing you should know is I am no drywaller. So if you're looking for a really intricate job, there's lots of great videos out there on YouTube, I'm sure. However, if you're looking for something that looks halfway decent, if you consider this to be decent, this is what me and my son did before. We filled all this in and rounded this out. I have removed the shelf, and what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to take a piece of drywall here. We're going to cut it to the length of this opening, and then I'm just going to make sure this is coming out in the video, appears to be. And then we're going to take this piece of curved corner round. We're going to, all along here, we're going to use our drywall screws, screw it in here, then we're going to use our filler, fill this out, sand it. That's where we're going with it. Just wanted to give you a little brief idea so you don't waste time if you're looking for some really intricate type tips. Our opening is basically 59 3/4 inches wide. I'm going to make it a little less than, I'm going to cut our gyprock to be maybe about 59 1/4. This doesn't have to be exact. We'll move the gyprock a little bit from either side, so we'll cut it to that width, or length I should say. If you're using a piece of leftover drywall, as I am here, it's been cut down on that edge. Use what I call the good edge here. This is from the factory. So we're going to keep this one, and we're going to cut our length down on that end. I've marked our line along here. Just going to cut it with a box cutter. Probably should have got a new box cutter knife, but I didn't. Use my straight edge here. So I'm just going to score it first. In other words, just give a rough line. You can see where I'm going with this. I'm going to get my YouTube editor person to fast forward the rest of this. So what you want to do is, okay, this is the side that's going to be facing up that we're going to see. The dark side is going to be the side that's down. So kind of try to cut that on an edge like I did in the last, because you don't want this paper on the gyprock like sticking up when you go. So you just cut it down that and get a new box cutter knife. I got to get another knife here. This is dull. But you see, kind of cut it on an angle, and that'll avoid the paper on the outside edge of the drywall sticking up, and then it ruins your crack filling job. So our piece is cut to the correct length. A little bit of slack on either side. Like I say, I'm just going to even that out in the middle. And now I'm going to cut it to the correct width, which I believe, as we discussed before, in this case is going to be the width of that 2x4, and then that'll give us enough space here to put our quarter round. When I removed the shelf, the drywall here got damaged. Obviously, we don't want anything like that sticking out. Wear safety glasses, by the way. And what I'm doing, hopefully this will come out, again, I'm angling the drywall so that there's not going to be any pieces sticking out. We're going to put a piece in here and fill this out. And is that coming out in the camera? Yeah, I think you can see the angle I'm cutting at. Cutting there. That. Because of the fact that our piece of drywall is going to be the width of a 2x4, I am holding a 2x4 in front of that, and I'm going to mark it and cut it. Now I'm going to hold the 2x4 in back of the drywall, and if you're cutting a long piece like this, sometimes instead of the box cutter knife, handy tool is a drywall saw. And I'm going to cut it a little over, little extra beyond the line. Better to be a little thicker than not wide enough. Drywall can also be cut with a jigsaw. With our piece in place, the next step, you're gonna, as we talked about with the length of it, I'm gonna place it so that it's a little extra space on that side, this side, and down the other side. Then we're gonna take our drywall screws, go like that, screw it down. Always good to take whatever it is you're doing and just kind of envision it. Here, okay, we can see that that'll be flat and roll over here, place it nicely. Do it on the other side, and now we're ready. That's gonna be good there. We'll put the drywall screws to it. I'm going to be using 1.5 drywall screws. These are actually longer than I need. However, I'm not going to stop on this in the middle of this job to go get inch drywall screws. Also, because I'm at my son's house and I didn't take my drill in, so normally what I would do, there's a bit you can get that will go into a drywall screw very nicely. You put it in your drill and you drill these down. However, I forgot my drill and I can't find my son's drill, so I'm gonna I got my piece position here, and I'm just gonna secure it down here, roughly the middle, and I'm just gonna go back and forth here. Take the hammer, take the Phillips head screwdriver, and start securing this piece of drywall. Sink the head of the drywall screw below the surface of the drywall itself, because when we put the filler over this, we don't want to be hitting the head of that screw. You see how this goes right over it? This is fiberglass drywall tape. You use this where you have big gaps, where you don't want to have big gobs of filler. So this is the damaged area we discussed before. I'm going to just put some tape over this area here. I'm going to stop the camera for a second while I find the end of this roll. Found the end of the roll. So just going to get a rough idea of the length, which is around there. Watch your fingers. As you can see, this cuts really easy. Place that over there so that'll catch the filler. Might lower that a little bit there. I don't need much on the top because our quarter round is going to be going over that. There we go. Hopefully that's coming up the camera. And while I'm there, will this come out in the camera? I'm going to move the camera a little bit. I'm going to put some along here, along this edge here too. Up there. Let's see, that's about the right length. I'm going to cut it extra long, and I'll just cut it over there when we do this side, if need be. Like that. And a good way, if you're on a corner like this, to get that in at the roughly 90-degree angle is take one of these drywall trowels. We'll use this later when we fill in, and just place your tape like that. Cut that excess over there. Gonna cut my quarter round. I've already marked it right here. This is pretty easy stuff to cut. Good sturdy set of scissors will do it, or your box cutter, knife, whatever. I'm going to secure the quarter round. I'm going to kind of just go up like here and then there, go along and just keep an eye on it to just flat horizontally and flat vertically. In an area like this, you may find that you use a lot more drywall screws than you would think to keep this surface down. See, there's a ton of drywall screws. And the reason I'm doing that is because when I go to put the filler on here, I don't want the filler to be what's keeping this corner round in place. So, see that? See how I tap that and that's down? I'm going to put another screw there to keep this in place. Corners like this, I've cut them on an angle after they're in place so that the sharp 90-degree corner here isn't popping out. So, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I am not a drywaller. And here's the key thing for someone kind of new to this to remember. Less is more. What we're gonna do is we're gonna fill this in, and we're going to, it's gonna be multiple coats. An expert would probably do this a little differently. Now this is easy here because we have, as I mentioned earlier, we've sunk all these drywall screws down, and we're gonna fill this in. So in this portion, we can go pretty thick simply because we have, as I said, we know what's going to be the flat portion here. So I'm going to move our camera down to this side here. Hopefully, is that coming out? Down here. And we're going to apply our first coat down there. Now here we're going to go like that. And it's just one of those things, if we don't put too much on and let it dry and then we put another coat on, it'll minimize the amount of sanding we have to do. I'm just going to move this down to the side here of the camera. So we're just going to go, as I said, multiple coats along like that. Once that dries, we'll just build it. We'll sand it off a bit and build it up. It is the next day. The filler has dried overnight, and this is what I want to point out to you about the less is more as far as the putting the filler in. This portion here is where we had that gap, and I put the small piece of drywall in there. This was actually still a bit dark up until a couple hours ago, and this, as I said, it's the next day. So even after about 12 hours, because I had put it on so thick here, this hadn't fully dried. Now it finally is dry now, but that's what happens when you put it on, the filler on really heavy. Anyway, at this point, I'm going to take a sanding block that's wide enough, just going to move my camera back here, to cover from the area where I put the drywall filler. So like that. I'm going to sand this down, and then I'm going to put my second coat on. So just going to move this up here. Let's see here. So you can get the idea. See, that's still very rough there. And then what I'm going to do is take another piece of sandpaper and do this, get rid of these big edges here. Actually, I'll probably take my, I'll scrape off some of these big hunks there. I'm just going to show you. I don't want to sacrifice this, but just for the purposes. Then we'll take the sandpaper and smooth that over. To sand off this curve, I'm just going to take a small piece I don't want to sand down into our vertical and horizontal, so I'm just gonna right on the corner bead itself, pressing down on this portion. By the way, this is not a sponsored video in any way, shape, or form. This is just all the products I bought. This is what I'm using for filler. Now that everything is dried, we're going to be putting much less on for the second coat. Now, hopefully this comes out in the camera. This is where my drywall filler ends here. So I want something long enough to go the whole width of it. I'm gonna move that down so you can see that. So again, we used a lot of filler the first time. You might notice that because the filler dries, and you can kind of see how you get some gaps, but you just do it again. Let's see here. Up on top here, you recall where we had to go really thick with the filler. We're gonna have to go a bit thicker on this again. Anyway, I think you get the idea. Just keep going like that. The last coat has completely dried now, and same routine. I'll sand it off and put one last fine coat of filler. As mentioned, it's going to take a lot less this time. You'll notice. Just going to do a little bit here just to show you. So for the final coat of filler, you can see that there's a whole lot less going on now. It's just filling in those. Here's the final result. All done, painted. Not too bad for our purposes. Hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for watching.